Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of Sideboard Files. Manuel here, your host as usual, and I'm joined once again by Tobias Mieth.
Hi everyone.
So, how are you doing today?
I'm totally fine. It's a bit early today, but I'm not tired at all. I'm really stoked to go into this episode of Sideboard Files.
Wow, excellent. This is a good start. This is a good attitude. Okay, so this time we're talking about Modern again. The deck of choice is Lantern Control.
Yeah.
We will discuss the sideboard choices and also the specific plans in two matchups, Lantern Control versus Gift Storm and Lantern Control versus Azorius Control, White-Blue Control. I don't know exactly what's the labeling, but I think you understand.
I like to call it Azorius Control, but Blue-White Control is fine as well.
All right, okay. And as usual, I would like to go for the main deck configuration first.
Mm-hmm. The list I have, I played it in the MKM series Frankfurt. And when I prepared for it, I thought about, okay, what's the meta right now? The meta is still, we talked about the deck last time, the boogeyman of the format is Death Shadow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discard running around, how to battle discard. And the choice I made is to play 4 Leyline of Sanctity main deck. Except for that, the list is pretty stock. Even with the Leylines main, this is a list that has been running around for a while now because people thought about, okay, how to address this meta. And this is a fine choice because this makes discard a dead card for them. And even worse, when they play Death Shadow, they want to Thoughtseize because they want a life loss, which means they have to Thoughtseize themselves. So you can see their hand, they have to discard a card, and this is perfectly fine for you. And furthermore, Leyline is a card you have anyways in your 75 because you desperately need it in some matchups because it can help you to shore up the problems you have with these decks. And if you have it main deck, you have more space in your sideboard for other cards you don't have main deck.
Okay. So any other choices you want to underline, or the rest is pretty stock?
The rest is pretty stock. Even in itself, the list with the Leylines main, this is what a list with 4 Leylines main would look right now.
Okay, that was pretty quick, so we can just jump straight away to the sideboard. Here it is. And you have 2 Grabdigger's Cage, 1 Welding Jar, 2 Pithing Needle, 2 Spellskite, 1 Crucible of the Words, 1 Lost Legacy, 2 Seal of Primordium, 1 Nature's Claim, 1 Girapo Ether Grid, and 2 Collective Brutality. Collective Brutality is everywhere.
Indeed, it is.
So such a good card, Okay, I would like to ask you, how did you come up with this particular configuration? What were your reasoning when you thought about the meta, what you expected, and how did you decide to assemble the sideboard this way?
So, there are few cards you really have to worry about when you Lantern Control because the meta is not that much targeting you right now. But there's one card you always have to worry about, which is Stony Silence. So we have a quite broad package for Stony Silence, which is over here. You have the Seal of Primordiums, you have the Nature's Claim, you have even the Girapo Ether Grid, which beats Stony Silence because you can still tap your artifacts for pinging your opponent. And you have Lost Legacy, because what's better than being proactive about it and naming Stony Silence before they can play it?
Sure.
So something you don't have to worry about. But Lost Legacy is generally a good card in the strategy because there might be spells in the opponent's deck which might be troublesome to you, and you can just exile them. Something else you have to address normally is the Death Shadow decks. The Death Shadow decks are addressed with our main deck right now, because normally we would see 4 Leylines here in the sideboard. We have them in the main deck, as we said before. And so this is already tuned against the Death Shadow decks. We are almost pre-boarded, and you can see this in the sideboard. You have so much space for other matchups where you normally wouldn't use this, like the
Crucible of the Worlds.
The Crucible of the Worlds, yeah. And you have even space for 2 Spells Guides, because normally Spells Guide is something which gets not used as much right now. There's not as much pump spells played in Modern right now, but you still have space for this, because you never know. And Spells Guide is in itself a good creature in your deck, because it can even protect one of your prison pieces by sacrificing itself in case of a removal spell. Yeah, this is... you have so much broad space for different matchups because of the ley lines main. They might be clunky sometimes in your main deck, but it's a sacrifice I'm definitely fine with making.
Okay, you're willing to pay.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So a sideboard that is already somehow, I would say, conceived to deal with not only the cards that you really are afraid of, but also the most popular matchups that you expect to find in the meta game, especially in the wide fields such as Grand Prix Copenhagen.
The funny thing about this matchup is, as I said before, you don't have to board much in the matchups you will face most often. So this is like a plus if you don't have to use your sideboard so much, because you have to think about your deck like a combo deck. You have to assemble something before your opponent can kill you, and so you don't have to overboard normally, especially in matchups where they have fast threats, and which is the case for Death Shadow. It's a proactive deck, and you don't board. Yeah, you board some stuff, but not much. And this is like one of the strengths about this deck.
All right. I want to ask you actually some questions about a few cards, because they're cards that are pretty known, and I already understood that there are all of these cards here, but nonetheless, I would like to go through. And Grafdigger's Cage, Dredge seem to be gone, but actually this is not really true, so I can understand your inclusion. And is this also interesting for other matchups?
Yeah, definitely. Every matchup using graveyard interaction can be shored up by this. The funny thing is, you use your graveyard as well, but you don't get hit by the Grafdigger's Cage as hard as they get. So because you can recur over Academy Ruins, and it's not playing a spell from your graveyard or recurring a creature from your graveyard. So this is like a one-sided hate. This is perfect.
Okay, pretty cool. What's the welding jar actually for?
For spot removal. So if they have artifact spot removal, this can, like the Spell's Guide, jump in front of the spot removal and save your lantern, save your bridge, whatever you need right now.
Mm-hmm. The Spell's Guide?
The Spell's Guide. What is it for, you mean?
No. I understood Spell's Guide, but you were talking about the welding jar.
I was talking about the welding jar, but it has a similar function than the Spell's Guide.
Okay.
Because the Spell's Guide itself is like a 2-mana welding jar, but for 2 mana more, you get even a creature out of it, which can block sometimes. But sometimes this can even be bad. It's quite funny. You bought this in against Burn, for example, the Spell's Guide. But you still have Leyline against Burn, because Leyline is really good, because they can't bolt anything than themselves or their own creatures. But if you suddenly have a Spell's Guide on the board, then they can put their bolts to use. But this is just a minor thing.
Okay, so sorry, I misunderstood you before.
No.
All right. And the Needle, quite flexible card. We know this, and I was wondering, what is that for, actually?
Needle is for especially planeswalkers, creature lands sometimes, and you have a 2-2 split, because most of the lists which are playing Leyline main have 4 Needles main deck. And I said, okay, right now there aren't too many decks where you need Needle, because planeswalkers are not that popular right now, except for Liliana of the Veil, but Liliana of the Veil gets shut down by Leyline of Sanctity already. So this is for decks that use planeswalkers, that use permanents you want to stop from doing whatever they are doing, and this is perfectly fine. If you face something you can't easily mill normally.
Okay. Pretty clear, I would say. And the Spell's Guide, we talked about it before, and still, it's something that you can also side against the very aggressive decks, stopping their creatures and stuff like that.
In my opinion, still the best sideboard creature in Modern.
Sure it is. And now this is curious. Crucible of Worlds. Sorry.
Crucible of Worlds is for grinding. There are matchups where your opposing deck is not as fast, and you just need to grind them out. You can use like the good old Wasteland lock that has been used in Legacy, for example, or Vintage with Crucible, but this time only with Ghost Quarter, but it still is fine. There are a lot of decks that don't play that many basics in Modern. But funnily enough, you normally play it more against decks where they have a lot of basics, because the decks with a lot of basics are normally slower. And if they're slow, you can just Ghost Quarter them out of the game. So no permanents left for you. Goodbye.
All right. That sounds pretty nasty, but also pretty effective. Okay, Lost Legacy. You mentioned this before in the package against Stony Silence, basically. And are there any other matchups where you can actually use this?
There are actually a lot of matchups. If your opponent's strategy is based on one card, or there's one card you don't want to see after sideboarding, you always bring this in. Even against combo decks especially, it's very potent. Because take Ad Nauseam, for example. If you name Ad Nauseam, what are they gonna do? Nothing. If you play against Giftstorm, you can name Past in Flames.
Past in Flames.
Past in Flames. And it shuts down the way of recurring all their stuff from the graveyard. This card is really flexible. This is what I like about it. And it can address your weaknesses again. Because if you can't stop something with your prison lock, you can name it with Lost Legacy, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Okay,
and sometimes when you assemble like your prison and there's still one piece missing, this sometimes acts as the last piece, because you can name something which you haven't covered yet, and then you can cover it with this card.
All right, so another insurance policy for your plan to be applied and executed as expected.
A resolved Lost Legacy is always met with a sigh of relief when you're the Lantern player.
Okay, I can understand that. I can see that pretty clearly. All right, jumping on the last row here, and the Seal of Primordium. Again, another card that you want to board when you expect Stony Silence, but maybe not only in that particular instance.
No, not only that, it's on the card already. It's for artifacts and enchantments. What's good about Seal of Primordium is it's not an instant or sorcery, because you have the bridge. And the bridge is concerned about your cards in hand. So if you're waiting for a target and the opponent hasn't a target on the field yet, and you draw a sorcery instant which kills a artifact or enchantment, and you are stuck with this in hand and you don't have anything to target, you might die by this. Because sometimes even having one card in hand is enough if the opponent has like a lot of 1/1 tokens or whatever. So this is good, so you can proactively get this out of your hand, as it's an enchantment in itself. So you can just play it and let it sit on the board until a target comes around.
Sure. It's a permanent, stays there.
Yeah.
And you force somehow your opponents to actually consider this. This is already on the battlefield. I have to find a solution. I have to find an answer.
Definitely.
Very good. So we have 3 cards left. 2 cards of which we somehow mentioned already. And I wanted to ask you actually.
Just one thing about Nature's Claim. I just said that Seal of Primordium is so good that you can get it out of your hand. Now you might ask, why do you have Nature's Claim in your deck then?
I wasn't. You anticipated me.
Yeah, because this is an instant and this might get stuck in your hand sometimes. However, if you're really, really desperate, you can still Nature's Claim one of your own permanents. I mean, you play like a bazillion of artifacts, so there's always something you can target, and it can gain you life as well. So in some matchups, this might be already good if they're like on the burn plan or trying to kill you, and you suddenly gain 4 life. It's okay. So this is like a more tempo-ish play to the artifact enchantment hate. And the life gain is pretty interesting in your deck, because it can be life gain for you. But if your opponent gains life, you don't really care as much, because normally the only way of killing your opponent with damage is by Girupur Ether Grid. And if you have to kill your opponent with Giropo Ether Grid, the game is quite strange anyways already, because normally you just mill them out.
Okay. But this is like sort of plan B that can work when it's not possible to mill them out, or is...
Giropo Ether Grid is, as I said, it's for if you can't mill them out, if they have something that recurs something from their graveyard every turn, this can help. If they play like Emrakul, might be problematic. However, you have answers in your main deck already for Emrakul, because you have 2 Surgicals and 1 Pixis of Pandemonium, which can exile cards, so it's totally okay. And sometimes you can even, when you control their draw step, you can see, okay, Emrakul is on top. Yeah, draw Emrakul. It's fine for me. Yeah, that's what you can do with Lantern Control.
Yeah, sure.
However, this card sometimes can even bail you out if you are in a pinch time-wise. Because sometimes you lost game 1 after 30 minutes or whatever, and then you need to think about, okay, how can I win quickly? And this can help you sometimes to get a win, because sometimes if people are realizing, okay, I might be losing right now, okay, if I stall long enough and he can't mill me out fast enough, then I can win 1-0. And this helps sometimes because this can speed up kills. But normally this is... You wouldn't normally use it for this, but sometimes it's like okay, I need a speed kill, I need Giropo Ether Grid right now, even if it's not good in the matchup.
Yeah, sometimes you need to adapt to circumstances and find your way out, let's say. Okay, we have the last cards here, 2 copies of Collective Brutality. What are these for?
Collective Brutality is for, again, combo decks are pretty good to target with this, because you can take sorceries or instants out of the hand, which might be problematic for you. This is for burn or other aggro decks, especially decks that are really fast, because sometimes you have the problem of playing your bridge on turn 3. However, you still have like 2 or 3 cards in hand, and they can still attack you. So what you could do is on turn 2 play like Collective Brutality fully escalated. So this means you discard 3 cards and you get your hand empty pretty quickly. And you get a life buffer, which is good against aggressive decks. You can kill 1 creature, and you can take another card out of their hands if you're lucky enough.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. That is pretty effective.
Yeah.
Okay, we wrapped up the sideboard section, let's say, at least the overview on your choices. We can now go to the specific matchups. And I would like to start with Lantern Control versus Gift Storm.
Mm-hmm.
What are your objectives in game 2 when you're facing Gift Storm?
So Gift Storm is a pretty linear deck, which means they want to be quick about it. They can even have turn 3 kills at times. And you want to raise them by assembling your own lock before they can combo you out. I mean, you have Leyline of Sanctity already in your main deck, which shores up their plan of grape-shotting you. But most of the times they bring in Echoing Truth for this, or they bring in Empty Devorance to attack you on the ground. However, what you need is like some crucial cards, but you don't want to overboard, because your main engine of mill pieces and the Lantern of Insight is what wins you the match. You want to control their draw step before they can do anything.
Okay, that sounds pretty actually straightforward and clear. And yes, that fits perfectly with the construction of the deck, because you were mentioning before that you want to have only few cards to side in and out and ensure the integrity of your strategy and the engine of the deck.
This holds especially true if the opponent's deck is pretty quick, and Storm, I mean, it can win on turn 3. Sometimes it can even win on turn 2, which is really rarely, but it's like a typical turn 4 deck, so you have to be quick and you shouldn't overboard.
Very good, very good. Let's suppose now that you won game 1, so in game 2 you're going to be on the draw.
Mm-hmm.
What do you side out and what do you side in when you're facing Gift Storm?
So first of all, Manu, Lantern Control is a bit special when concerning boarding, because against any deck you will ever play with Lantern Control, the boarding on the draw and on the play are exactly the same. You have to think about it like this. Lantern Control is a prison deck, and you want to assemble this tiny fitting prison for the opponent's deck where he is stuck in, he can't jiggle out and move anywhere. So you need all the right pieces, and they have to be assembled in the right places, which means you need exactly these cards for this matchup, and you don't gain any tempo by boarding on the draw, on the play, or whatever, because the game is going long anyways if you want to win. And this means you draw your whole deck or mill it, and the same for the opponent, which means you have to think about every card in your opponent's deck and how to beat it. You have to think about, okay, how can I win against this card? And all the pieces need to be there then.
I think this is really important. You need to grasp this concept and make it yours, let's say.
Definitely.
All right, so what do you board out?
So you board out 2 copies of Abrupt Decay, 2 Pithing Needle, and 1 Ensnaring Bridge. Which is quite funny that you bought out Ensnaring Bridge, but you want to have some space for what you bought in, and Ensnaring Bridge is normally not that important against Gift Storm, because most of the decks want to grape shot you out. Some bring in the Empty the Warrens plan with the Goblin tokens. However, for this you have 1 more turn, because it doesn't kill you immediately. You have 1 more turn to hopefully play your bridge then and be fine. So it's fine if you have 1 less copy of the bridge. Then Pithing Needle. You have no targets at all except for fetch lands. So get rid of it.
Okay, pretty clear.
Abrupt Decay, you might think that Abrupt Decay might be okay because you can interact with their turn 2 Goblin Electromancer or Baral. However, this is a card which is pretty clunky for 2 mana and doesn't do enough, because it just kills like a lord, I like to call them. It's they are the Storm Lords, and doesn't help you at assembling your own game plan. You're off to the races, and you shouldn't be concerned about a creature on the board for them. Sometimes it might sound okay to Abrupt Decay one of their lords, however, it's better to worry about your own plan.
Okay, your choice is about sticking to your plan and just not mind about that single creature and try instead to establish your lock and confine your opponents in their prison as fast as you can.
Definitely.
All right, now what you brought in?
So what we bought in is 2 copies of Grafdigger's Cage, 1 Lost Legacy, and 2 Collective Brutality. The Grafdigger's Cages are there for them not using the Past in Flames, because this is how they win most of the times. They need to generate Storm, and they do that by replaying what they've played this turn already, and you can stop them from doing this. This cuts their deck in half, so to say, because 1 half is happening outside of the graveyard and the other half is happening in the graveyard, and so they have only half of their deck.
All right, extremely effective then, yeah. Definitely.
And for 1 mana, this is like what you need. You need to be quick, and 1 mana is perfect.
Sure, you can play turn 1 without any problem.
Yeah. So, and then the 1 copy of Lost Legacy. This has different targets in this deck, depending on what your hand looks like and what your board looks like. Sometimes you can, if you have, for example, Ensnaring Bridge down, you can name Grape Shot. So the only thing you have to worry about is like an Echoing Truth for your Ensnaring Bridge in the end. If you have Leyline out, you can name Empty the Warrens, so you don't have to worry about the Goblin tokens, and you can just be beat down by 2/2s is not like a good plan for your opponent, because this gives you a lot of time to find your Ensnaring Bridge or like the Echoing Truth. It happens in a lot of games where I have like Leyline down, Bridge down, that I actually name Echoing Truth with Lost Legacy, or sometimes Shatterstorm, because these are cards coming out of the Gift Storm sideboard which are hateful for you and you don't want to see. However, it's better to name like the actual win conditions, because even if they Shatterstorm you, it doesn't mean they win. It just gave them a big advantage. But I prefer to name the win conditions and take out the win conditions.
Okay, that's your first choice, but you have also, of course, to adapt on the say, unfolding of events and how the game flows.
Especially if you think about Shatterstorm, naming empty the warrants is quite good because Shatterstorm hits the bridge, but it doesn't hit your ley line. And so the ley line is still safe. You can't be grape shotted. So if they don't have goblin tokens, it's fine for you.
All right. Pretty good. Okay.
And then the 2 copies of Collective Brutality. This is like the substitute for the Abrupt Decay because it can still kill Goblin Electromancer. However, it's not as clunky because just for discarding 1 card, you can take out one of their rituals off their hand. So they don't have the possibility to win quickly because they need the rituals to win quickly. And discarding cards isn't too bad for them sometimes. However, with rituals, it's pretty crucial because if they want to win quickly, they just need the rituals. And this just gives you time by discarding a random card, whatever, may it be an excessive land or sometimes even one of your mill pieces because they are redundant and you can get rid of it. And maybe rebuy it later with Academy Runes if you have somewhat of safety. In the beginning against these decks, it's almost like, okay, I need to be quick. And then if you slowly assemble your lock, you can chill out a bit.
Okay, the pace slows down a bit. And it's actually true that with Collective Brutality, you can also discard 2 extra cards. I mean, use all the modes and get down quickly in case you have a bridge and you're fearing the...
Sometimes. The most common mode against Gift Storm is to let them discard an instant or sorcery or kill a Goblin Electromancer. Baral can't be killed because he has 3 toughness. However, I think it's more important to kill Goblin Electromancers because Goblin Electromancers can stack because they can have like 2 or 3 out. Baral can't stack. So if you kill a Baral and they have another Baral stuck in the hand, you just opened up a dead card from their hand because Baral is legendary.
Okay, all very, very clear. We can now go to the next matchup, actually. Lantern Control versus White-Blue Control, also known as Azorius Control, depending if you like the Ravnica guilds or not, basically. And same question as before. What are the objectives in Game 2 when you're facing this deck?
So your objective is to grind a bit more because this is a really slow deck. This is like the other spectrum of what we've seen before. Gift Storm is a deck that can, as we said before, win on turn 2. This is a deck that wins like on turn 20 something, whatever. So it's a pretty slow deck against a pretty slow deck. So you need answers for their permanence and you need to possibly grind through whatever they can offer you. And you need to answer spells that are problematic for you, like Cryptic Command is like the worst card for you in this matchup, and you need answers for this.
Okay, crystal clear. So now let's go for the sideboard plans. On the draw and the play is going to be the same as you mentioned before.
Definitely.
So what do you board out and what do you board in this matchup?
What you board out is, first of all, 4 Leyline of Sanctity, 2 Abrupt Decay, and 2 Ensnaring Bridge. The 4 Leyline, they don't have any purpose at all in this matchup, so just get rid of it. The 2 Abrupt Decay, they can only hit like random soldier tokens from Elspeth. Not a good plan.
Yeah, nothing interesting.
Or the only really good use in this matchup is hitting Sphere of Detention, but if you need to wait for a Sphere of Detention to hit something, it's normally not a good plan anyways, and sometimes if this gets stuck in your hand, you need to target one of your own permanents because you don't want to get killed by Elspeth tokens or whatever, so not good at all. And 2 Ensnaring Bridges because this is a really slow matchup and you have time. You sometimes can even, if you switch up your boarding a bit, depending on if you're playing against Esper Control or whatever, against these control decks, you can even sometimes board down to 1 copy of Ensnaring Bridge because even if they have so few win conditions, you can even mill them sometimes, so you don't have to worry about it. And their way of winning is still through combat damage, and it's totally fine to have only 1 copy sometimes.
Okay, and what do you board in?
So first of all, before we're talking about what we're boarding in, you may have realized we boarded out 8 cards, so we have space for 8 cards to be boarded in. this is due to the nature of the matchup. It's really slow. And in slow matchups, you have time to assemble your prison for the opponent, which means you can even dilute your own plan a bit. And especially in this matchup, you have more space because you can get rid of the ley lines. So a lot of stuff to board in. You board in, first of all, they are white deck. So what do we have to worry about? Stony Silence, as we talked before. So you need the One Nature's Claim, the 2 Seal of Primordium, you need the Giropo Ether Grid, you need the Lost Legacy, and then after we're done with the Stony Silence hate, I would love to call this.
Yeah, sure.
We have the grind card in Crucible of Worlds, and then I like to board 2 Grafdigger's Cages, because the Grafdigger's Cages can shot down Snapcaster Mage. So your normal way of dealing with a hateful card is by milling it. However, if they have Snapcaster Mage, what use is it to mill a card you don't want to see? Not good at all, but this addresses this problem. So you don't have to worry about Snapcaster Mage anymore, making Snapcaster Mage only a 2/1 ambush wiper. Totally fine for you. Crucible, as I said before, it's a grind package. And it's especially potent in this matchup because they have a slight land destruction plan themselves. They have 4 spreading seas, and they have 4 ghost quarter, and they even have Crucible sometimes in main deck, but most of the times in the sideboard, and they will bring it in. So how to battle a Crucible? By using your own Crucible. I mean, you can ghost quarter yourself into oblivion, but it doesn't help if you can recur your own lands. This is totally fine then. And the rest we've talked about already.
Yeah. The best is pretty clear. Just one question about Lost Legacy, actually.
Yeah.
Naming probably Stony Silence 90% of the time, but not necessarily only Stony Silence. You have other cards you can target?
There are a lot of cards you can target. The most used targets in this matchup are, as you said, Stony Silence, and Cryptic Command is one of the cards I like to name quite often. Or if I don't have Grafdigger's Cage right now, I sometimes even name Snapcaster. It's also depending on their hand a bit, because sometimes you know what their hand looks like, either from Lantern of Insight, and you have the pesky duty of writing down what they draw every turn. Or sometimes from a discard spell. I mean, you play 6 discard spells main deck, so you can get quite a decent look at their hand at times. So the most named cards are normally Stony Silence and Cryptic Command. That's what you have to worry about.
Okay, those 2 cards, key cards to make sure that you actually can execute your plan and not worry too much about.
Yeah, the main problem about Cryptic Command is not really the counter. The counter itself is already bad for you. However, the big problematic part about it is bouncing something on your end step, because you can't interact instant speed with most of the stuff you have. So if you have only 1 Ensnaring Bridge, they bounce at end step and then attack you for lethal. This is how you lose the game. And so naming Cryptic is always good.
Okay, pretty important to keep this in mind.
Definitely.
Very good. I think we reached the end for this episode, and thank you very much, Toby, for being here once again. And a big thank you to all of you who are watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, because we surely did. Stay tuned on HEDRON.TV for more content to come, and for now, it's goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.